Hey guys, I received a message recently and I thought, hey, I bet my response could help other people. And that happens a good bit with my channel and with my interaction with folks about shaving. And he was asking for some advice, had a few questions, that sort of thing. And so I thought we would talk about that. And the main gist here is uh, face lathering versus bowl lathering, or specifically face lathering with kind of a thicker load, a more dense looking lather, as opposed to the kind of the thinner lathers that you might see on my channel. And I took some thumbnail shots to see what might be a good thumbnail for the video, and I was like, well, here's a loosey goosey traditional density badger brush silver tip here with a bowl on one side, and here's the high density declaration knot here, a 28 millimeter declaration cane brush, and B4, I think, can't remember, but you can tell the density difference, right? And so that was, I figured that might be a funny little uh, snippet for the thumbnail. Now, I figure we would talk about this because my method definitely differs, and my opinions about lather differ from some guys out there by quite a bit. There's a whole lot of YouTube shavers who like lather that's a lot thicker than I might prefer it. Now, the bottom line is, and this is the overarching concept above this whole video, is it's just my opinion, and everybody else has their opinion. And if you find a lather that works for you, it doesn't matter if it agrees with me or anybody else. You do you and enjoy doing it. You find a lather that you enjoy, there you go. You found the right one. Not really any hard truths about shaving. Even the truth about, well, if it works well for you, then it must be a good lather for you. I mean, not maybe a guy not doesn't maybe he wants to feel a little pain when he's shaving. I mean, even that's not absolute, right? But generally, most people are going to do what makes them happy, and that is at least one almost absolute in wet shaving. Just do what makes you happy. And so I constructed an email in response to his email, and so I'm going to use that as my notes here to make sure I cover what I want to cover. And so, yeah, YMMV, your mileage may vary. It's kind of a correlation to that, but mainly my point is you do you. If you find what makes you happy, do it. Don't be sorry for it. Enjoy it. Now, my admonition might be then don't try to push it off onto a bunch of other people as the truth, because after all, it's just your opinion, not the opinion, right? But again, that's your business, right? But yeah, if you find something that makes you happy, there you go. So he just has some questions about lathering, and he knows that I've done a lot of studying about lathering, and most of the videos that he has seen, they load quite heavy, and especially with big dense badger brushes, and then slowly add a bit of water and then stop adding before the soap breaks on a person. And there you go. And I said, yeah, that's a popular style. Nothing wrong with it if that makes you happy. He went on to say that he doesn't see that I get such a heavy load, which is true. I do not load heavy at all. Matter of fact, if you watched when I was playing around with MDC and chiseled face, I was counting the swirls rather than counting the seconds of load time. That's how light I was loading. But that's because I was using those soaps consecutively, and that little bit of loading was providing me with enough soap to easily give me 4 or more passes of luxurious lather. So yeah, I don't usually load for a long time. In a way, I wish I could load for more, but it just means you have to add more water later on, and stuff like that, because I've got a bunch of soaps to get through, right? And he talked to some of his friends about my own lathers. Maybe he showed them my videos or something like that, and they said things like, and I think these are representative of a lot of viewpoints about my own lathering style. And there's nothing wrong with these viewpoints because, again, everybody's got their own opinions. One person said, I don't like the way his lather looks structurally. Another person said it looks washed out, that kind of thing. He's gotten rid of all the density from his lather. Another person said, looks completely washed out, kind of the same thing. But this person at least said it's very thin, but if it works for him, great. But he didn't want to lather like that. So at least he's throwing in some, the fact that everybody's got their own opinions. Another person said a thick lather is dense. Even if it is more concentrated, it's still mighty slick. And that can sometimes be true. Nothing wrong with that statement. And for all of those comments, and I appreciate him communicating with me, and he did it in a respectful and kind way. It seems like he's really interested in learning and discovering, and my opinion, and then the great thing is he'll be able to go out and try all sorts of things to find out where he lands, to learn, what he likes the most. Hopefully I can help him along on his journey, and I'm definitely pointing him to some other resources as well as my own. And then hopefully he can, but he did say he was having some trouble. And first, in my response to those comments, I was talking about how, well, first of all, my response is pretty much the same for all those comments. My priority is on the performance of the lather. I want it to be highly slick so that my skin is protected, so that my razor moves really easily on my skin. And that's my main thing. The secondary focus is that feel of the lather. I want it to feel great on my face while I'm working with the brush. I want it to feel good in my fingers optimally, although that's kind of a tertiary thing, because it can still shave really well and feel luxurious on your face, even though it may not feel creamy in your fingers. And you know what I love, and I found this out recently, is that I want those rinses between the passes to feel luxurious too, and a good lather can do that. All right, so those are my priorities, and so obviously, if people have different priorities, then you're never going to arrive at a common conclusion, right? Now, I will take sometimes a lather too far in terms of hydration, and if I do, then you'll see me mention that on the video. And often I will then tell you about, here are the clues that helped me to know that it was a little too thin, like razor skipping right here is often the first place, if my lather has gotten too thin, for my razor to kind of skip on me a little bit. But in general, unless I say otherwise, and usually I'm telling you about the positive, I'm saying, wow, that was a great lather. I comment to you about how my razor moved, about how it felt. I'm usually telling you whether I like it or not. And if so, then that accomplishes my goals. And if it accomplishes my goals, then that's the right lather for me. And so I don't really care if it looks weak, if it looks too thin. I don't really care how it looks, because that's just not my priority. Now, there may be other guys out there who want to see in the mirror some kind of thick, foamy lather. Maybe that's a priority to them, even up with the performance aspects. Well, I generally think that those kind of lathers and with some soaps, may not perform as good. So for me, performance trumps the look of it. But that's my own goal. If looks are really high on your priority list, then make sure you make a lather that looks good for yourself. And that's what I continue to say. They look nice, but a thick lather does not have a lot to do with the actual shave. And by what I mean is that, let's say you've got a 3-4 millimeter thick coating of lather on your face. It looks nice and thick, looks dense, it's opaque. You've got that white, creamy look on your face. Now, people who like it really wet might easily be able to look at it and go, wow, that's dry. Maybe that looks pasty or whatever. But the point is, if it's that thick on your face, what's actually helping you in the actual shaving process? It's only what's right next to your skin. Let's generously say 0.5 millimeters of the lather is right next to your skin, and that's going to be involved in protecting your skin against the blade. Well, all the rest of that extra is nothing. It's not helping you during the shave. In fact, what's going to happen is during your stroke, all that extra stuff, that extra thickness, is going to just get raked off by the razor and go down the drain. And so a thick lather may not necessarily help you at all. In my illustration here, it does not impact your shave at all. It just gets in your way and clogs up your sink. And so for me, The focus is making sure that the consistency of that thin layer on your face is where you want it to be to give you the slickness that you want, the face feel that you want, and the protection that you want. And so that's what matters to me. And so that's why, and I made this note in many of my videos where I'll say, well, it sure does look thin, but that doesn't matter, because in the end, it's that thin layer that's on your skin that does the protecting. Now, yes, with some soaps, a thicker lather than you'll often see with me can still be quite slick. It all depends on the formulation of the soap. No problem there. But for me, I'm always shooting for the slickest, and I usually find that something that's super opaque is not as slick as it can be for me. Another person said the bottom line is that people have been shaving with soap for centuries, and there's no need to get granular with technique, especially if the lather that you see on me is the result. So obviously he's saying two things. He thinks you're making a big deal out of nothing, and then number two, your shaving lather sucks. Well, we've already discussed how people have different opinions about lather, and that's okay. He can think mine suck. I don't have a problem with his opinion about my soap. But the other point is that you're making a big deal out of something that you shouldn't really make a big deal out of, is an opinion we see a lot. Actually, in just about every area of the internet. Even if you're talking about carburetors in Trans Ams, you might have some guy jump in here and says, it'll all get you to point A to point B. Why are you guys bothering with this stuff? Well, I mean, you can see how silly that is, right? Yeah, then why are you here on this bulletin board griping about it? Why are you making a big deal out of this? But yeah, and priorities are different for different people. If a guy lucks out and managed to stumble upon a shaving method that works for him, then he hasn't had to do too much work, has he? And then he can look back and tell everybody who's having trouble that they're making a big deal out of something. Well, that's not really fair, is it? Maybe he has tough skin, and any blade will work on him, and any lather, regardless of hydration, could work on that kind of person. Maybe that's the case. Who knows? Maybe he just doesn't care. And that's fine too. But don't push that viewpoint off on those of us who do like to fuss about details. It's our hobby. That's what the thing is. This is not, we're taking it farther than something that we have to do every day because we get enjoyment out of it. And so who is that kind of person to say what we can and cannot get enjoyment out of? And obviously that kind of person who doesn't like critical thinking about shaving is not going to be at home or find too much common ground on my own YouTube channel and probably on many of the forums out there. It's just not made for him, and that's okay. He can just do his thing, but he shouldn't really tell me that I'm making a big deal out of nothing when it's my interest, it's my hobby. There's probably something in his life that he makes a big deal out of, whether it's his tackle box with 87 different lures, and when he's out fishing for that bass, he has to use just the right one. If I don't care about fishing, I might jump in there and unfairly say, you're making a big deal about nothing. I don't want to be that kind of guy. And again, it's all about making himself happy. If his simplistic shaving philosophy makes him happy, go for it. I actually enjoy being critical, talking about shaving with you guys, and a lot of people get back with me and tell me that my analytical approach is informative and helpful to them and even enjoyable for them to watch. And I appreciate that a lot. So, each to his own. Shaving is a skill, and some guys, they don't value it as a skill, but some people do. And you want to get better at that skill, and that's what this kind of channel is all about. Now, there are a few guys out there who have to pay close, attentive detail to the skill of shaving. They may have skin problems. They may have really sensitive skin or issues they have to work around, and they have to pay very close attention to the kind of lather they're able to generate. So, obviously, it's going to be very important to them. Some guys like me don't really have too many skin problems, but we just enjoy the nuances of it and find it trying to achieve the best in this particular skill. And I don't see anything wrong with that. And I think that guy who phrased it that way, if he thought about it objectively, he shouldn't think about anything wrong with that And the guy, as I was telling you, the initial guy who contacted me about this, he was terrific to say, please don't take offense from any of these comments. Um, but I'm sure you already knew that other wet shavers don't agree with your technique. And see, that's fair. It's true. And I did not take any offense at all. He was very fair and constructive, and that sort of thing. And while many shavers like their lathers thicker than I do, and it's true, and I've said it's true for years, there are also many on my side who enjoy the wetness aspect of the lather and think that that's where you find the best slickness. And so I'm not alone. But even if I was alone in my opinion here, in my lather technique, I wouldn't care because it's accomplishing the goals that I want. I'm getting the performance that I want, that slickness and protection that I want. That's what I'm getting. I'm getting that feel, oh, that great, the rinses, all those things I was telling you about, my goals in doing the lathers the way I do. I'm getting those, I'm achieving those goals, and that makes me happy. And so even if I'm the only guy who does it the way I do, who cares, right? And if you're unique in your approach, then you be happy with yourself too. And so, yeah, he's struggling with some of the approaches. He's got a lot of the really dense brushes, kind of like the Declaration style brush with just the backbone, the density there. And he's struggling trying to figure out a good lathering method. And good news is he's got every day, perhaps he's able to shave every day to try something. And so we'll see. Hopefully he'll keep in touch with me about his journey. He's got those really dense brushes like the ones I've mentioned, plus like Black Eagle and Simpsons and Mozingo and Varlets and things like that. I have had experience with Declaration brushes as well as a smaller Simpson and a few other dense knots like the That Darn Rob has his Fanchurian knot. It's pretty dense. And he said he wonders if you need to change your technique when using one of those dense brushes versus something kind of more average density. And for me, I've found, pretty much the same. My technique, pretty much the same way. The only thing I might do is vary the load time. If it's got a lot of bristles, if there's stiff bristles, if there's high backbone on the brush, you may not have to load on that soap. If you load from the soap surface, you might not have to load for as long because it's going to do a good job of picking up lather, picking up soap from the puck. But that's really the only variation to my method. Now, if he chooses a face lathering path, I'm not as adept in that because it frustrates me. But he may have to vary depending on the brush he has if he's following that path. I told him I have Declaration Grooming and That Darn Rob playlists on my channel, and so if he wants to see my perspective on using those dense knots, that could be constructive for him to watch those videos. And I told him that even if he doesn't end up lathering like me, that trying some of those different techniques or looking at the way I do it could teach him something that might help him in his face lathering. Either way. And I mentioned one theory that I have going, that dense knots, they may not hold as much lather in them, and I'm pretty sure this is true, as a same knot size that's a more average density knot. Well, duh. If there's less room between the bristles, there's less space for the lather to be. So if the brush holds less lather, then yeah, maybe that dictates that you have to make it a more dense lather, that you have to make it drier so that you have more stuff in there. But to me, that doesn't matter as much because if I'm lathering with a bowl, I can always go back and get more lather from the bowl. So that kind of works out for me. And yeah, I suggested to him, play around with a bunch of styles and find one that gets as close to what you like as possible. Do it for a while, then you'll be able to modify it as you need to. And I suggested that even switching to bowl lathering for some time might help him, because even if you don't end up that way, it might teach you something about the way lather comes together that could help you as a face latherer. And then that reminded me of some of the different methods I've seen out there of loading of lathering that could also help him, and maybe it'll help you out there as well. Precision Loading by Cosmo Barber. He has got a YouTube video out there, very similar to my technique, and it's a bowl lathering type technique, but that's a good one to take a look at. But then getting back to face lathering, you've got the Marco method. It's on Badger and Blade. You can search and find that out, and it could potentially help. Lots of water in the brush at first, and then kind of a long loading time, but you're not pressing down very hard, and so that's why you can get away with a long loading time. Really wet brush, and I guess the idea is you're loading enough to where then once you start on your face, that you now got everything in the brush that you need for that lather. You've still got tons of water, that sort of thing. So the Marco method is out there. A wonderful guy named Sourav, if I'm pronouncing it close to correct, he put together a lather video out there. His username on YouTube is SOURAV, and he has a lathering video, and he face lathers and works on getting that. Maybe it's more the style of getting the paste on there first and then starting to work water into it, that sort of thing. But that's another face lathering style that might be worth looking at. Let's see. So I said there's your homework, my friend. And a key important thing here is that when you try a new method, don't try it just once or even twice and then ditch it. I've seen plenty of guys try bowl lathering and fail at it and say that bowl lathering is bad. Plenty of guys, even really well-known guys out there in the YouTube shaving universe. But that's not really very fair, is it? Maybe it's just you're a bad bowl latherer. And so likewise, I've tried to be very careful when I've been frustrated with face lathering to say that I am not an expert in face lathering. My attempt here didn't go to my satisfaction. I wasn't really all that pleased with it. But, so be fair. Try something out a good while, several attempts, so that you can try to make sure that you're not the problem instead of that technique being the problem. And a common thing he says is that as a face latherer with a lot of money spent on brushes, those high density brushes are not cheap. He definitely wants to feel the lather and the hairs against his skin instead of a bowl getting all that joy, right? Well, that is a very good point. And I rebutted with, yes, it's a common opinion, and there are bowl lathers out there who do just mix it up and then paint it on and shave. However, I also love the feel of the brush, big time. I wouldn't be using the brushes that I have if I didn't enjoy their feel, and I don't want to be shafted about that. Also, I believe that the lather that I'm putting on needs to connect with my skin. I need to work it into my skin so that it can protect and be slick and give me all of its positive benefits. If you just lay it on and then start shaving, it's a much more rough experience. So I like to work it in. Well, I've definitely seen me work a lather up in a bowl and then start to paint that on, and I work it in, give it a nice long time. I've seen that happen and take longer than other guys who only face lather. They just kind of work it up, add a little bit of water, now I'm ready to go. Sometimes I, with a bowl lather, can work my face with that brush longer than some face lathers. And so just because you're a bowl lather doesn't mean that you're getting the raw end of the stick when it comes to the brush experience on your face. Also, between passes, pretty much every shave, you'll hear me say, I don't really need to be doing all this work on this second pass here, but I just enjoy the feel of the brush. I do that all the time because I want people to know that it's not necessary. After that first pass, you really can just lay the lather down and be done and go on with your next pass, but I like the feel of the soap, the lather, and brush so much that I usually take that time to enjoy it. something that hit me, maybe even during the composition and the thought behind interacting with him here, is that if you are a big user of these high density brushes, you may think a lather is broken as you've added water to it when it really hasn't. Because I've definitely seen and experienced when that lather gets really hydrated, a high backbone brush, even a bore brush that is not high density, you'll feel it. You'll feel the brush tips more if it's a thinner lather. And so they may be perceiving, with that high density brush, they may be perceiving that the lather's broken, but it's really not. If they were to take a more conventional brush and put that same lather in it, it'd probably do just fine. And so there's definitely a point before the lather breaks where a lather may not work very well at all with a high density brush, but would be fine with other brushes. And so that's an important point. But in effect, if you like the high density brushes, then yes, there is a point where that lather will stop being enjoyable if you keep adding water to it, and that's for sure. And so in effect, it may have died to them in their perspective, But anyway, I think I've made my point there. And this particular person, he asked if I thought that modeling that particular YouTuber would be a good idea. And while his first lather, and the guy admitted online that his first lather felt a little dry, but his second one looked a lot better because he added some more water. And I said, yeah, that second one actually looked pretty good. And if you're going to be a face lather, then yeah, this guy might actually look like somebody to model your system after and see how you feel after you've kind of worked on it for a while. I also then suggested some other face lathers that look really good to me as well. And Michael Friedberg, HD Shaves, Chris from Another Cut Above, in addition to Surov and some of the other guys I mentioned before. Those guys might be great to check out as a person who likes face lathering, and to see if any one of their methods comes across as matching your style or what you want pretty well. Now, I just recently found out that Chris from Another Cut Above has paused his video making, but he's got a ton of past videos for you to enjoy. I guess life happens, and that's just natural, right? Different stage in life. Maybe he's changed his priorities a little bit, and that's great. I'm sure he would only be making that change if it was necessary and a positive thing for him. So, but he's got a big library of videos out there still, and I always enjoy watching him. And there we go. So that's my response to him, and I've answered this question a whole bunch. And so maybe I'll use this video as kind of a retort, just to provide the advice that to refute some of those common things like the brush experience is not as good if you're a bowl lather, but I do spend a lot of time with a brush on my face, and so I feel like I enjoy it and I get that out of it. Things like that. And as always, remember, even if your lather looks horribly dry to me, and I feel for you, but if it makes you happy, that's the right lather for you. Now, I do suggest, even though you might find a lather that is good for you, and I do this myself, I experiment, and I try to push it a little farther with water, or back off a little bit with water, because what if you then find out that it was actually better and you just never knew it? Now, the good thing is, as I try to shoot for perfect, a lot of times I'll miss it by a little bit, and so I'll end up experimenting with different things anyway. But that's the case. Keep playing around, and I think it's a very good point where, and I've learned things from face lathering, from my attempts at face lathering. I've learned some things that are helpful to me to echo out to you guys, but also to help me in my own bowl lathering too. So it's all good. And so he was wonderful to communicate with. He expressed his opinion and asked good questions, and I'll be sending that email as a reply. But I'll also send a link to this video because it's always nice to watch a response instead of reading it necessarily. And of course, the video always is a little better to communicate emotions and things like that, and to reiterate the perspective of this is just my opinion and my experience. While it has been that those wetter lathers give me a better protection on my face, better slickness, if you're able to still achieve what you want with a drier lather, then that's just really great. So there we go. I hope this helps some of you guys out there. All the best to you. This is Sugar Daddy Shaves. Take care.